Hey class, I want to talk to you today about how important it is to be able to write a good academic summary of a text that you are assigned to read. So here we go. Writing a summary. First, just in case anybody doesn't know, I want to talk about what summaries are. My go-to definition of a summary is that it's a condensed, objective retelling of a text. But there are some words inside that definition that I think we need to unpack for a second. All right, so what does it mean when I say that a summary is condensed? I just mean that it's sort of compressed or concentrated. Basically, it's going to be shorter than the original thing that you read, right? So a lot of times in college, you might be asked to read a 5 to 10 page article, but then your teacher says, please write a 1 paragraph or a 1 page summary. So that, yeah, that's shorter than the original. A good summary is objective. And what that means is that it's unbiased. You keep your personal feelings and opinion out of it. You don't put your own 2 cents in to an academic summary. Even if it's positive, you still shouldn't include it. I read a lot of student summaries that start with saying, this was a great article. I'm glad you enjoyed it, but that's not an appropriate thing to include when you're just being asked to summarize. If you're being asked to review or respond, that's a different story. Okay, and yes, a summary is a retelling of a text, and so I mean that in a pretty literal sense. You are retelling from the original. You're communicating the content of that original text, but of course you must use your own words. You got to put it into your own words. And then finally, the word text, I just want to remind you that that is a very inclusive word. I'm talking about articles, essays, textbook chapters, you name it. Okay, why is it so important as a college student to know how to write a summary? Well, I'm a reading researcher, that's my background, and so I'm always thinking about that. And I can tell you from my experience and from my studies that the research shows that the best way to truly understand a text is to take notes on it and compose a summary of it. So if you want that information to stick, that's what you should do. Here are some comparisons I like to use to explain the importance of summary writing. It's like dribbling for basketball, rudiments for drummers, scales for musicians, chopping for chefs. It's a fundamental skill, and you're going to use it over and over again. And, instructors like me, your writing instructors will ask you to write summaries. You have one coming up in Unit 2, but in future college classes, even if the instructor doesn't specifically ask you to write a summary for homework, it's often implied. For example, if you have a teacher who says, read chapter 10 of the textbook and there's a quiz on Friday, it makes a lot of sense to go ahead and take notes and compose a summary of the text as you prepare for the quiz. And then research papers. Anytime you have to write a long paper and incorporate several outside sources, part of the paper writing process is writing summaries of those outside sources. I always tell my students that the first sentence of the summary is the most important sentence of the summary. It's the first thing that your reader is going to see. And you want to pack as much information as you can into that first sentence. It should pack a punch. The author, not just the author's name, but maybe 1 or 2 words to signal the author's background or history. You usually want to get the title of the text into that first sentence. Just a reminder that most titles of articles and essays would be placed inside quotation marks. In some situations, it is appropriate to include the year and place where the article was originally published. And remember, the person reading your summary, maybe they didn't read the original. And so, unless you explain it to the reader, they won't have any clue what the original article was about. So don't forget that. Don't take it for granted. Be sure to include the topic in your first sentence of the summary. You also want to capture the author's point or purpose or position. I like how all of those words start with P's. It's important to explain that, and the best way is to choose a verb or a short phrase very carefully. So here's an example of a first sentence of a one-paragraph academic summary. And it includes all of the things that we just talked about in the previous slide. In the 2019 Time magazine article, Taco Cat is Taco Cat spelled backwards, Grammy-winning recording artist Taylor Swift reveals a shocking truth about the nature of tacos and cats. So you see the year of publication, the original publishing company, Time, the type of text, magazine article, you've got the title, you've got author information, author name, and then her purpose, which is to reveal a shocking truth. And then tacos and cats, that's the subject matter. So these first sentences are very information dense, and that's a good thing. As you read the assigned article or chapter or essay, you want to read with your summary in mind. So as you read and take notes, you want to plan for composing a summary. And the way I would do that, my recommended strategy is paragraph shrinking. And the way that works is you number the paragraphs of the text. As you read, stop after each paragraph. Write down the paragraph number on your note-taking paper. And then you want to write a keyword, short phrase, short question, or even a symbol to represent the content of that particular paragraph. You want to ask yourself, what did the author just say in that paragraph? Or maybe even, what is the author trying to do in this paragraph? And when you have gone all the way through the article and done your paragraph shrinking, you will basically have completed the pre-writing for a summary, be it one paragraph or one page. A phrase I like to talk about when I teach students about writing summaries is even coverage. You want to provide even coverage of the original text in your summary. So if you've got a 10-page article and someone asks you to compose a one-paragraph summary, watch out, here comes some math. After your first sentence of your summary, each remaining sentence should cover 1 to 2 pages of the content of the article. Another thing I like to tell students is let the shape of the text guide you in your summary writing process. You want to identify 3 to 4 themes or subtopics or subsections and compose one sentence to represent each of those. If you're working with an article that already has clearly marked subsections with subheadings, I mean, that's great, and you should build your summary according to that structure. And don't forget about the work you did as you were reading and taking notes. Continually refer back to your paragraph shrinking as you write. Okay, I'm going to share a couple of my favorite pro tips for successful summary writing. Instead of writing that the author talks about whatever, write that the author discusses it. It's a simple substitution of words, and it will elevate your academic tone to the next level. In other words, you're going to sound fancier, and that's a good thing. Here's another pro tip. Once you get to the end of your one-paragraph summary, refer back to the original article and your notes and ask yourself, how did the author of this original text conclude their article or essay or whatever, and use this sentence pattern. Use the author's last name, Swift in my case, and then say concludes the article by, and then go ahead and fill in the blank. How does she conclude the article? You have to put it into your own words. But if you do that, again, it's going to make your paragraph very professional. It's going to signal to the reader that this is your closing remark, which is good stuff. Okay, now for 002 students, you do not need to worry about this yet. But eventually, when if you're writing a longer paper and you are asked to summarize an article within that paper, you would need to provide a citation. So I did want to mention that. Just kind of put that in your back pocket for now. I do not expect to see citations yet in our unit essays. But when we get there, the way that will look is you'll have an entry for the source at the end of your paper. And if you're doing MLA style, it's called a works cited. And then at the end of the last sentence of the summary, I would expect to see an in-text parenthetical citation. And for MLA style, if you already got the author's last name in your summary, ideally the first sentence, then you don't need to repeat it in your citation. You would just put the page range of that original text in your citation. Again, don't worry too much about this. I just feel like I need to mention it for the future. Okay. And so most of you right now are working within Unit 2. The writing assignment for Unit 2 is a 2-paragraph composition, where paragraph number 1 is the objective summary paragraph. You're summarizing the text you've been asked to read, but then paragraph 2 is a subjective reader response. So it's if any of you have ever driven a stick shift, you're changing gears between paragraphs. So first you're just objectively retelling what was in the original, sort of giving a condensed play-by-play. And then when you start that next paragraph, you can shift gears and give your personal response to the text. You can make connections to things in your own life or other texts that you've read. And that's how Unit 2 essay works. I also want to give you a little tip on the Unit 2 test. The last 2 questions of the test are open-ended and you have to write. And for Unit 2, test item 19 asks you to summarize the first 3 paragraphs from this particular passage that you will see in the test. And then test item number 20 asks you to summarize the back half of the passage, paragraphs 4 through 7. So you do want to apply what I've told you here to writing those kinds of summaries. Remember, don't put in your 2 cents when you are asked to summarize. You just need to loyally and faithfully retell what was in the original in your own words. As you write these summaries, aim to compose 1 sentence to represent each paragraph. So your summary for item 19 should be at least 3 sentences long, and your summary for item 20 should be at least 4 sentences long. Again, I just want to remind you, when you are being asked on this test to summarize the passage, you should not insert your personal opinion or try to review the article. Just be straightforward and retell the content of the original in your own words.